My name is Dr. Jamil Khan, and I am present here to represent the faculty, WA faculty of Royal College of General Practitioners.
Could you outline what the mission of your organisation is, the RACGP, and how that mission is practically achieved?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, the Royal College in Australia is the largest general practice organisation, and we represent over 90% of Australian general practitioners.
Can you explain why that position is taken in terms of why you neither recommend nor encourage the use of medicinal cannabis?
We feel that the high quality research, and I emphasize the high quality research, into the safety and effectiveness of medicinal cannabis products is still in its infancy, where large mortality is associated with the use of opioids for the control of, say, chronic pain. I think it's important to note that medicinal cannabis, in that sense, is a very safe product. I won't call it a drug as yet, but a very safe natural product because its safety levels and overdosing issues are much more better and safer than any of the other medications that are available.
Have you surveyed your membership on their attitudes towards medicinal cannabis?
I am not specifically aware of any specific survey, but I do know that quite a few GPs find it a bit hard to, while acknowledging the benefits of medicinal cannabis, find it a bit hard to access and prescribe it for their patients.
So your organisation highlights the need for further high quality research into the safety and effectiveness of medicinal cannabis products. Is it not accepted that such research has been undertaken internationally already?
The scientific double-blind studies, which are now being done, and I am aware of 2-3 of them that are being done specifically in Australia, would come up with evidence that would, beyond any doubt, inform us about the efficacy or otherwise of some of the products that are being used. So in that sense, it's a yes and no. Yes, the evidence is mounting, but what we are mentioning here as RACGP in the RACGP response is availability of those double-blind, specially designed studies, which are now coming online, quite a few of them.
Okay. Is a hurdle being put in front of medicinal cannabis that's not being put in front of other, perhaps, if I can use this term, more conventional medicines that come to the market or to the medical community?
My personal opinion, I do not think that there are any specific hurdles that are being put in place deliberately. I think it's more a question of over-cautious approach towards this product. You being able to drive when you have THC can be compared with a couple of other drugs and medications. Alcohol you can with a certain limit. You can drive with benzodiazepines, opioids, a couple of other medications. But here it's a zero level. So those type of issues can, in an indirect way, be seen as problems to access the medicinal cannabis. Detection against impairment. I think that's the main issue with medicinal cannabis right now. If you have had THC in your normal dosage, you're doing well. Actually, there is some evidence that in some cases, a lower dose of THC made drivers more safer because they were keeping distance and they were observing other things much better than if they were not under THC. So that said, right now there's a test that the police can conduct, and if it shows THC, that's it. The scenario is changing with more and more evidence coming online with regards to the clinical efficacy and efficiency of medicinal cannabis for those particular conditions. For example, epilepsy in kids is now accepted beyond any doubt because of some of the studies that have been done. We definitely support the use of medicinal cannabis in areas where there's lots of evidence, like case studies available, and even some of our own members who have been, including myself, who have been prescribing medicinal cannabis have found, and that could be called anecdotal evidence, so to speak, that it works and it works very well. So the college while keeping or maintaining its position that further high quality research would help everybody to accept the normalization of the use of medicinal cannabis or streamlining of the use of medicinal cannabis.
Why have you said that it should be removed as a Schedule 8 drug for only as a treatment for non-drug dependent patients?
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a bit of a concern with regards to THC and its effect on people who have used or have a recent history of addiction to the use of marijuana as a recreational drug. And we also have some evidence that overuse of some of those recreational drugs can cause mental health issues. And while it is clear that someone who does not have any history of addiction to any recreational drugs, it would be very easy to manage them and to keep them to the dosage regimes that are being suggested. One of the experts suggested that instead of TGA being the controlling organization, a separate specific structure could be created to manage the rolling out and normalization of the cannabis products, which is a bit more well informed about medicinal cannabis and is not looking at medicinal cannabis as a traditional medicine. It is not a tradition. It's not a pill that you give and you get X amount of reaction. It's a slightly different product, in my opinion. Therefore, I think that if we have a structure, either state structure or a federal structure, I don't know, which could be charged with managing the approvals till it becomes an approved drug in Australia. The process is so cumbersome, and you are at the same time trying to deal with the Department of Health in Western Australia and TGA. Many of the GPs find that, for instance, I have to have a half an hour session with my patient for the first time if they are interested in getting access to medicinal cannabis. Now, that's a lot of time in GP land. So that is one. The second is probably lack of information and education by the GPs.
How do we address this educational deficit that you're talking about? What would be practical steps that we could achieve to address this deficit?
I feel that if the State Department of Health can allocate funds and start putting in a structure where we can get information which is not biased by any of the other stakeholders, but is coming straight from the Department of Health, would be very helpful. It would be very easy for the GPs looking at Cancer Foundation. That's an organization which is dedicated. We do not have any such thing for medicinal cannabis.
So I'm interested in the Schedule 8 process. So we've heard a lot about it. It's very cumbersome and it takes a lot of time. How often would a GP in their normal business need to do a Schedule 8 process for any range of medicines? Is this something that's quite unique? I know there are other Schedule 8 drugs, but I'm wondering how often you have to go through this process for any drug on the list.
Now, for opioids, which are Schedule 8, there is a cutoff level. For instance, say oxycodone, I can issue up to 30 milligrams of immediate release a day or 90 milligrams of slow release a day without getting any approvals in writing from the department in advance.
One of the problems that you and I both have, I mean, over 1,000 prescriptions for cannabis, but I'm titrating a patient with PTSD, the THC is going up, and at 30 milligrams per day, I need to send to a specialist psychiatrist who's got no knowledge of prescribing THC at all. Does that, in your mind, is that a barrier to prescribing? Should we be addressing this?
It is a big barrier, sir. It's not just that, but I have found that in many of my patients, some of the psychiatrists had a very negative approach and they gave a very negative feedback to the patient. And in fact, they wrote a letter back to me stating that would not be advisable. And I stood my ground and I said, no, there is evidence. And as it would, in that particular patient's case, it showed that patient was able to come off multiple medications which were making their life miserable.
Finally, Dr. Khan, have you got any other suggestions not yet discussed on how to improve the regulatory and practical difficulties faced around medicinal cannabis?
I personally feel that if we are able to address the issues around access and the issue of bribing, those are the two main things that if we can address them, there will be a big jump in the useful, in the beneficial use of medicinal cannabis for medical purposes.